Testing 1, 2, testing.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our lovely packed hall today for our planning committee meeting. I'm going to do things in a little bit of a random way, which people who come here often are used to that. So we'll take the apologies. We're still waiting for one of our members who's just walked through the door. Good evening, Mac. What an entrance. So we'll take our apologies first.
Apologies have been received from Victoria Charleston, and Patricia Podger is substituting for Jenny Bolwell.
Thank you. Any public questions and statements?
None received.
Any councillor questions and statements?
None received.
Oh, there was one for Ted Last, but that relates to Leadenhall. So if I can find it on my email, I will read that out.
Okay.
Minutes from the previous meeting. Is everybody happy with them? Yeah, thank you. I will sign them at the end. Declarations of interest.
None received.
Dispensations.
None requested.
Chair's announcements. We did do a visit of Leadenhall. A few of us went recently, and we're going to have the presentation in a short while. But I don't think I've got anything else. Annie, have you got any S&DP stuff?
Yes, just to let members know that tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, I hope Andy Hunt will be on a Zoom with a lot of other parish councils from Wiltshire, talking to the head of planning at the officer level and the head of planning at councillor level about all the different problems that parishes are experiencing with the planning system. And I'll report back to on that at the next meeting. It's good to see this is an organisation called WALPA, which is like an association of parish councils of Wiltshire that are involved with planning. And I think it will be very valuable. And it's kicked off again after a bit of a quiet time. So fingers crossed that working with other parishes, we'll be able to make our voices heard on some important points of principle. Sorry, I can't hear you.
Is the planning committee also allowed to join the meeting?
No, it's just parish council representatives. This is something that I've been doing for the last 4 years. It sort of sprang out of my involvement with the neighbourhood plan. So since nobody else has volunteered to take it on, I've carried on with it.
Right, now on to the planning applications that were received since 19th of January. So we're going to skip the Sarum Academy one unless there's any members of the public in the audience that wish to speak on it. I don't think there are. We're going to leave that until the end. Paul's Dean, has anybody looked at this one?
Yes.
I was, Andrew, have you got something to say on this one?
If it's the right one that I think, could you just call one of the documents? I think this is not an extension. I think this is creation of a new house, because it seems to have 2 front doors, 2 of everything, 2 kitchens, 2 lounges. It seems to me it's not just an extension. It might not be this one though. No, it doesn't look like it is that one.
I think this one was okay. I looked at it. I couldn't see any.
It's not that one. Sorry.
Happy for no comment? Next, the golf range we'll leave to the end. 33 Catherine Street, change of upper floors for commercial to HMO. I think it was just an addition to 1 bedroom. Anybody got any comments on this? Phil?
All I would say is that this one, there was on the late business there. There's another HMO for the next door as well.
Okay.
From the same person as well. So I don't know if we need to look at them together.
Okay.
Just to make sure. I mean, I agree with this one. I can see is not too bad, but the 35 Catherine Street HMO request is completely different.
It's the bit above Charlie's Cafe, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is above Charlie's Barbers, and the other one's above Charlie's Cafe.
Councillor Hock.
Thank you, Chairman. I think instead of going fast forward, if that's okay, I thought you were going to change it around by
No,
giving
no.
the Leadenhall
Yeah,
option.
I'm the
Yeah.
chair. I will do it the way that I have planned to do it.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
in that case, we need to do it slowly, not fast forwarding all the application.
Okay, right. That one we're going to bring back. 80 Complex Scots Lane. This is the Vodafone building. Their antenna, isn't it? It's the old GPO. Yeah, and anybody got any comments on that?
No, I think that's just a no comment one.
Happy for that? No comment? Right, thank you. 7 and 9 Fish Row, alteration and repair of first and second floors to residential to provide 3 self-contained flats. It's a resubmission. I think there was minor changes to it from the last one. Anybody got any comments? No.
No, all the listed building stuff looked fine.
Okay.
They
Oh,
seem to be taking some care over it.
okay. Are we happy for no comment? No comment. Oh, wait. Charter Court, Gigant Street. Installation of UPVC sash windows in the west wall of the lounge dining area. I looked at this and didn't think it was anything significant to comment on. Everybody else happy for no comment? Bouverie Avenue, single-storey rear extension. Again, we've no commented on most of them. Andrew? Okay,
Yes, in my ward, I'm happy with it.
happy for no comment? Right. So now we are actually on Leadenhall. So I'm going to call upon Nick to give his presentation.
Oh, there we are. Is that better? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chair, for inviting me to address the committee. I and my colleagues are delighted to have this opportunity. Delighted because we want to share with you our vision for the Cathedral Close. A Cathedral Close whose defining feature is welcome of all. We know that hundreds of thousands visit the cathedral every year. Worshippers, visitors, school children, event goers. If we could count as well the picnickers and dog walkers and sitters on benches in the afternoon sun, then that number would be far, far higher. And that's the close we want. A beautiful place, a purposeful place, a place that is open to all and that is enjoyed by many. And at the heart of our vision for that close is our plan to breathe new life into Leadenhall. It needs to live again so that its corridors resound with animated conversation once more, so that its gardens are full of the laughter of children once more, and so that a newly accessible archive can make a proper contribution to the learning of future generations. This is the plan that the committee previously supported. In my presentation, I will address the points of concern that you raised at your meeting last November. I have a number of colleagues with me. Among them are the cathedral architect, Isaac Hudson, Stuart Starr of Cole Easton, who prepared the flood risk assessment, and Paul Oakley, our planning consultant. Together, we will answer any questions that councillors may have. So, The life of Leadenhall has never stood still. It has evolved over the centuries. It's an institutional-sized building that throughout most of its long history has served the cathedral's life. It has never been privately owned. It was, of course, a much-loved local school, and it holds happy memories for many of its former pupils and their parents. Now it needs to live again, and achieving that through giving it a viable long-term future is the core of our plan. The cathedral, thank you. The cathedral has a proud and even award-winning history of working with heritage buildings. The cathedral itself, number 56B on Choristers Green, and number 17, all applications that have been across your desks. We've just begun a year's work on number 17. We've committed a six-figure sum to urgent maintenance and remedial works at Leadenhall. For 12 months, we've been seeking permission for these, and we're still awaiting permission from Wiltshire Council. But Leadenhall Restored will be a living hub for the realization of that vision of a close which is welcoming of all and enjoyed by many. Slide, thank you. We'll give new life to the building by repairing and refurbishing it so that what were once classrooms and dormitories become offices and meeting rooms. Leadenhall has been a working building for 70 years, and our plan is that it should remain one, albeit with a new emphasis. It's a plan that is altogether consistent with the hall's long history of service to the cathedral. It's a nuanced change of use from purely educational, and it was approved by Wiltshire in our pre-application in 2018. Slide, please. You'll know that we welcome thousands of educational visits each year from across the city and beyond, from schools of every sort and from children and young people of every age. We already use some of the ancillary buildings on the site to support this work. And the Stevenson Hall, purpose-built in the hall's back garden, is an excellent base for this and for some cathedral meetings. This will not change. We'll continue to make use of these facilities to support our work with schools. Slide. The second element of the application, which coheres with that vision of a close, open to all and welcoming many, is to care for our internationally significant archive and to make it properly accessible for the first time. Here's the proposed new building, which imaginatively reflects in concept and spirit the materials, form, and colours of Leadenhall itself and of the original gabled medieval canonry, the last remains of which were demolished in 1915. The archive has been designed in consultation with the National Conservation Service, the national experts in this field, and it will include secure, temperature-controlled storage spaces, a covered entrance, and a reading room for visitors. Historic England have described the design as a handsome building which reinterprets traditional forms and materials in a contemporary way. We're not an outlier here. You will know that other cathedrals and other heritage sites have constructed new buildings within their grounds to support their work with great success. Like ours, these have been designed with care to reflect their surroundings, and in some cases have been award-winning themselves. The one I'm familiar with is the Cathedral Lodge and Conference Centre in the precinct of Canterbury Cathedral. And when the new Archbishop takes up residence in Lambeth Palace, she will find a spanking and striking new library built in the grounds of that equally historic site. What we're proposing is sensitive to its context, and it will enhance the setting. The West Walk of the Close already has buildings in a variety of periods and styles and materials. For example, West Walk House, Leadenhall's neighbour, was constructed in the late 20th century. Its flood risk mitigation has been carefully planned to satisfy the Environment Agency and the cathedral's insurers. It uses evidence-based modelling and the most up-to-date EA data to ensure that the archive would not be impacted by a once-in-a-century flooding event. Indeed, during the bad weather that we're all still enduring, the area where we plan to build the archive has not been affected. Our close manager confirmed that this morning. Slide. The archive will be built on this grassed area to the south of Leadenhall. It was used as a play area by pupils of the school, and it's remained unused since the school closed. Slide, please. And here's a glimpse of the life of Leadenhall renewed. We'll restore the beautiful formal knot garden on the south side back to its former glory. And this image looks across that restored garden to the north facade of the archive, which recalls the rectangular openings on the facade of the original canonry that you'll remember from that earlier photograph. The most famous views painted by John Constable, including the cathedral from the meadows and the cathedral from the bishop's grounds, will not be affected by our plans. You know that Constable painted and sketched...
You've got about 30 seconds.
Not quite there, Caroline. I'll do my best. Constable painted and sketched hundreds of views of Salisbury. The one view on which the archive will impinge is his painting of the view south from Leadenhall, and that has already been compromised by the introduction of West Walk House that I've already mentioned. If we can look through the next few slides quite quickly, because these have been in your pack, the committee was concerned to see verified views. Here are verified views. The archive building from Harnham Gate, next slide. From West Walk, next slide, also from West Walk. And then we're through to the grounds. I'm going to ask your consent to keep going, Caroline, otherwise I won't have touched the things that your colleagues need to hear about. I'm very grateful, Madam Chair. And then I think on to the next slide, please, Andy. To talk for a moment about the grounds. So our plan will remove some of the construction that was introduced to the site when the hall was in use as a school. The conservatory, you can see it there, added to the rear of the building. Some of the wooden classrooms and a disused swimming pool. We will remove more than we are planning to introduce. The archive will occupy 1/3 of the footprint of everything that we are taking away. And that will mean that the rear view of Leadenhall across the water meadows will be better opened up. We'll restore that formal knot garden. will introduce woodland planting beneath established trees and plant a new orchard area adjacent to West Walk. Slide, please. The cathedral is committed to carbon reduction and so will make use of the former tennis courts, which are surrounded by walls and planting, to install ground-based solar panels and air source heat pumps. That will help us towards our strategic objective of carbon net zero and will be in line with Wiltshire's climate strategy and the City Council's climate change emergency declared some years ago. This is not, repeat, not a solar farm. The government's definition of a solar farm would require this to be 13 times the size that it is. Next slide, please. Other suggestions have been made about the location of the solar panels. There they are on the roof of the medieval cloister, by the way. To put them on the roof of the Stevenson Hall or on the roof of Leadenhall itself would not give the surface required to generate the power that the plant will need. On the air source heat pumps, a noise impact assessment has been carried out in line with Wiltshire's noise policy, and the results indicate that they will have very low or negligible adverse impact. The Public Protection Officer supports our plans. Slide, please. Historic England, the Environment Agency, are satisfied with the proposals. As I've said, the National Conservation Service supports the plans for the archive. We've shared our plans on social media, and they've been applauded by more than 1,000 people in the last couple of weeks. There are some of the comments that have been made. And just to bring us to a conclusion, what I know will be in your minds is what is the public benefit to this? The test that will have to be applied ultimately is what are the public benefits? I won't go through them all in detail, but let me give you some. Slide, please. The repair and viable long-term use of a Grade 1 listed building is a public benefit. The removal of otiose classrooms and conservatory and swimming pool is a public benefit. The use of the site as a base for schools work is a public benefit. A comprehensive plan to reduce carbon consumption is a public benefit. The addition of a handsome new building to the environment of the close is a public benefit. The long-term care of a significant archive is a public benefit. The bringing together of our staff better to serve the mission of the cathedral is a public benefit. We're proud of this plan. It will breathe new life into Leadenhall and it will let it live again. It will sensitively restore the building, improve its surroundings, and provide a new sense of purpose for its future as part of a close that is beautiful and purposeful, open to all and welcoming of many. The corridors will ring with animated conversation once again. The gardens will be full of the laughter of children, and Leadenhall will be at the heart of a close that is at the heart of the city we love and serve. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, my suggestion would be that we hear from the other side first and then ask questions sensibly amongst ourselves. So the people that would like to speak for the other version of Leadenhall, please come forward and welcome again.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jeremy Edwards. I am the chair of the Salisbury Cathedral Close Preservation Society. And before I start, I have 2 handouts that I'd like to give to you. If you could take one and pass it along.
Or share them if there's not that many.
Okay, we'd like to start by showing the short video that we sent in advance. This illustrates the issue of groundwater in the area. So this shows flooding from groundwater just on the other side of the wall from the Leadenhall site and where the archive building is proposed.
Thank you. Continue.
And the 2 handouts that I just gave you, the first one is a list of experts who oppose this planning application. And I give that to you to address the suggestion that we've heard that we are a group of wealthy NIMBYs. Only one of our society's trustees lives in the close. I don't. 55% of our members are not residents of the close. There are over 250 comments on the Wiltshire Planning Portal, mainly objections to this application. The petition on the Save Leadenhall website has well over 1,000 signatures. The experts of national and international reputation who have written to oppose this application, if you could select the experts tab, you can see some of them there. There's the Georgian Group, a statutory consultancy, the Gardens Trust, Wiltshire Historic Buildings Trust, art historians, planning specialists, landscape historian, art historians, including Anne Lyles, Tim Wilcox, constable in Salisbury exhibition, and Roy Strong. Then if we look at the press tab, amongst others, Robin Lane Fox has written with the strongest opposition in the Financial Times weekend. And Julie Harding has devoted a whole article to the fate of Leadenhall. Allowing this plan to go ahead risks making Salisbury look like a city that does not value its internationally and nationally recognized rare cultural assets. And that's not just our society saying this. This is a serious list of experts, and there's been a considerable press interest in this. The second handout that I gave to you, which also has some photographs on it, I won't go through it, but on the first page, there is a list of bullet points. And these bullet points, each one basically summarizes the point of opposition that we have to this planning application. But I'll leave it with you to look through at your own leisure. I'd like to pass on to my colleague, Terry.
Yeah, that's fine. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Terry Byrne. I'm one of the trustees of the Close Preservation Society. I too do not live in the Close. We want to address planning issues. You've heard from the Dean a presentation that involved a degree of emotion. What we are concerned about is the planning issues and planning law. The first key issue that I would like to address is that the Dean and Chapter have allowed Leadenhall to become derelict. Madam Chair, at your meeting in November, it was noted that neglect of a building should not be rewarded by support for the planning application. It would also set a precedent and is against planning law. The Dean and Chapter, as owners of Leadenhall, are obliged to maintain and repair it. Planning law specifically says, if you don't mind my reading this, where there is evidence of deliberate neglect or of damage to a heritage asset, the deteriorated state of the heritage asset should not be taken into account in any decision. For the applicant to highlight the fact that they might intend to repair Leadenhall as part of their work in relation to their planning application simply should not be linked to this. That is a real planning issue which I believe you ought to be taking into account. I would now like to call on one of my other colleagues to continue with that.
That's fine.
Other points.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. My name is Liz Slater. I'm also a slightly shorter trustee, so I'll have to adjust the microphone. The thing I'm going to deal with is the second key issue, which is what you're here to decide has to be in accordance with planning law. And this application simply does not match planning law. The harmful changes to Leadenhall and its gardens, and the option of public events potentially in Stevenson Hall, and the proposed construction of an archive building are in conflict not just with the National Planning Policy Framework, but also Chapter 7 of the Neighbourhood Plan, which of course, because it was agreed in a referendum, forms part of the planning framework for this city. Therefore, this planning application simply should not receive consent according to both paragraphs 7 and 12 of the NPPF. And it says in particular, failure to take account of planning law could open also the council to judicial review. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but recently Guildford City Council actually approved an application by the National Trust for things they wanted to do to Clarendon Park. The Georgian group recently applied for a judicial review against that decision, and they won the right to pursue it. And 4 of the grounds on which they won that judicial review consent were actually grounds which could well apply to Leadenhall if you don't follow the planning legislation. The harm to Leadenhall will not be offset by public benefits as claimed, though I'm charmed to hear that there will be children playing in the grounds. The public benefits actually provide benefits to the Dean and Chapter and their staff, and in some cases, such as the archive, the solar panels and the landscaping will cause harm. You might also bear in mind that because there's no lift in Leadenhall, nor can there be one, the public benefits to anybody with mobility issues, whether an employee or a potential visitor, will be zero because they won't get beyond the ground floor, and how they'll get to the Dean's office is beyond me. There's been no systematic evaluation of alternative options for Leadenhall. If I can hand over to Jeremy, just so you get a change of face, and then I'll come back to deal with the garden.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, moving on, we call it key issue 3A, use of Leadenhall as offices and the construction of an archive in the kitchen garden are the wrong uses of the site. The plan changes will cause harm to the building, which will not be offset by any public benefit. The benefits, as stated, are for the chapter themselves. As Liz says, following representations by Historic England, plans for a lift have been withdrawn, so neither visitors nor employees with mobility problems will be able to access the first or second floors. And finally, it's not true to say that Leadenhall is the only place in the close suitable to house all the cathedral staff. In Appendix A to the Design and Access Statement, Canon Robert Titley acknowledged that Wyndham House, a 20th century office owned and already partially occupied by the cathedral, would be sufficiently large. It would cost less to convert and run. It is not listed, so there would be no reason for Historic England to oppose the installation of a lift. I'm handing over to Liz.
I'm going to cover off two other issues. The first is the garden, and the second is the proposed archive building. The garden and the views from it are remarkable because they were captured in a series of important paintings by John Constable. Not hundreds, I acknowledge, actually 16 or 17, and potentially 20 because another one has just been verified. They were painted mainly in 1820 and 1829, when Leadenhall was actually used as a family house. Yes, indeed, it was used by Archdeacon Fisher as his offices, because that's the way canonries operated, but he, his wife, and his children lived there, and they entertained John Constable and his wife and their children. And that's why the painting of the view across the River Avon is particularly touching, because if you look very closely at it, it's got paintings of the little children playing by the river. Art historians consider that Salisbury is actually key, therefore, to the later development of John Constable. And most of what he painted while he stayed at Leadenhall in a family home. In contravention of the National Planning Policy Framework guidance, the Landscape Master Plan takes no account of the historic garden. If approved, it would destroy the riverside path painted by Constable, which you can still see in the photographs of Leadenhall when it was a school because the grounds were maintained. It would impose an unsympathetic garden around Stevenson Hall. It would grub up the ancient fruit trees in the kitchen garden, which were captured in Constable's paintings and, despite what is said, are actually very productive indeed because we've benefited from them. The windfalls go over the wall. And while it might not technically be a solar farm, actually 160 large-scale solar panels in the kitchen garden, along with 10 air source heat pumps running 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, is what the Georgian group called industrial generation. So I think it's pretty bad. Some of the proposals are simply impractical, or frankly, they're greenwashing. The proposed pleached trees between the archive building and the southern boundary, they're not going to hide a 26-foot high ridge of the archive building, and they would probably succumb to the harsh and difficult conditions and be difficult to maintain. The use of a green energy tariff, we have been advised, would probably be cheaper and cause less harm than the solar panels. So that's the garden. Turning to the archive building. We all know that there's significant flooding in Salisbury. This used to be an event, even when we first moved here 25 years ago, that happened every decade or so. Now it's virtually annual. I stood at the top of Harnham Slope this morning, and there was water as far as the eye could see across the meadows and spreading over towards Leadenhall. With climate change, the situation is going to deteriorate. Once again, there's floodwater in the grounds of Leadenhall because I've seen drone photographs. If you approve the plans, you'll be in violation of the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraph 174, which says, development should not be permitted if there are reasonably available sites appropriate for the proposed development in areas with a lower risk of flooding. The National Archives guidance on choosing a site for an archive is unequivocal, quote, archives should not be situated in locations prone to flooding. The body cited by the Dean is actually a membership organisation. It's not actually the flood expert. The two I've cited, particularly the National Archive, are. There are alternatives. The Works Yard is one, and if you wanted to be really creative, you could look at Nash's picture, map of the 18th century, which I think you may have in your handout, or it's certainly going in to another handout, which shows that there was a first floor extending the entire length of the eastern side of the cloister. Part of it was removed. Why couldn't it be reinstated? It would be above flood level. So, to summarize, this is the wrong building. It's a highly assertive building. It's a vanity project. It's not subservient to Leadenhall, as said by the architect. Its ridge is higher than the cornice line of Leadenhall. It's set forward of Leadenhall. It blocks views from the West Walk House and from the south towards Leadenhall. The southern elevation, that's the side that faces down towards the South Canonry, forms an oppressive, windowless, 104 square metre boundary wall, which rises to 26 feet. There's no reference in any of the material I've seen so far to the British standard relating to flood resilience, which begs all sorts of questions. I'll hand over for the final bit to Terry.
Thank you. Just be brief because we're approaching 18 minutes now.
I'll be as quick as I can, Chair. Are there alternatives to this proposal? Residential use, either as a single house or flats, as a John Constable Centre, offering education, exhibition, access to the building and its garden. The combination of Arundel's, Montpesson House, the Rifles, and a Constable Centre would complement the cathedral's offer, including the Magna Carta, and increase the duration and value of the tourist visit, which is important to Salisbury. Opportunities for real community engagement and public benefit, such as establishing the kitchen garden in the therapeutic garden with a potential for access for the general public, using landscape restoration to present an opportunity to develop agricultural skills, a realistic cost to the purchase of Leadenhall would need to take account of its derelict state. This would offset the costs of repair and adaptation. The site is irreplaceable. Look at what it evokes. The Salisbury community deserves this, so please object to the applications. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentations. Committee, do you have any questions? Because obviously we've got some experts out there that can answer some. Annie?
Yes, could I ask the people who are representing the cathedral, when we had a short tour around the site recently, people were talking about removing some of the wooden classrooms around the outside of the Stevenson Hall. I came away with the impression that they were all going to be going, but in some of the illustrative photographs in this literature which you've handed out, it looks as if some of them are still there. Can you just explain how that works to me, please?
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. The proposal is that with the exception of the Stevenson Hall itself, all the wooden classrooms go, together with the conservatory, together with the...
Yes, I understood about the
Simple.
conservatory and
Yeah.
everything. It was just
Yeah.
slightly, I think it was one or two of the illustrative viewpoint photographs that left me slightly baffled, but
No, that's the...
they will all be going.
They will.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask you another question while you're up? Is that all right?
Of course.
If you don't get planning permission, and obviously that doesn't rest with us, we have an advisory body, we're an advisory body, and I can understand that it's important to you to have our support. But if you don't get it, what will you do with the building? Will you still repair it?
Well, I think that's a really good question and gets to the heart of the issue, doesn't it? Because the way to repair Leaden Hall is to find a long-term viable use for it. And that is what we're proposing. With the greatest respect, there is no other proposal in the room or on the table that will do that. If we do not get permission from Wiltshire, we will have to consider what we do. There is an appeal mechanism, of course, and we'll explore every avenue at our disposal. We, of course, take very seriously our responsibility for our built heritage. With Salisbury Cathedral, we have the cathedral fabric is in the best condition it's been in since the 13th century. We've done wonderful work on buildings in the close. We know how to care for our built heritage. Any suggestion that we don't is spurious. As I said in my presentation, Madam Vice Chair, we've applied for permission to undertake urgent remedial work to Leaden Hall. And after 12 months, Wiltshire have not responded to that request. We're pursuing that. But that's patchwork and piecemeal. What the building needs is a future that gives it life into the next generation and beyond. And that is what we, and I'm going to say only we, are proposing.
Thank you. I'll let somebody else have a question.
Mac and Andrew.
As we go round and round, I've been following this obviously for months, and I think possibly, in my mind, what would benefit everybody in this committee, everybody here, and Wiltshire committee who make the final decision, is that the argument about where all the alternatives considered and why they should be ruled out needs to be made very plainly. And I wonder possibly if we could call on you.
Of course.
Yeah,
No,
just to make those.
I mean, I heard the suggestion that the portion of the cathedral library which no longer exists should be rebuilt. Councillors, that would involve building on the medieval cloister. If you think about the medieval cloister of Salisbury Cathedral, yes, above one section of it is the medieval library. The medieval library used to extend along a whole walk of the cloister. It's no longer there. If councillors believe that the Cathedral Fabric Commission for England would allow a building on the medieval cloister and that sort of intrusion into the historic fabric, then I'm afraid you would be mistaken. That simply would not get off the ground nationally. The site that is frequently talked about is the Works Yard site. And it is absolutely the case that in the cathedral's master plan and in our long-term ambitions, we want to redevelop the Works Yard site to the south of the cloister. But that is talked about in a way that makes it sound as though the Works Yard site is a bit like Hermione Granger's handbag, Those of you who know the stories know that Hermione, in her really rather small backpack, was able to conceal a tent, a cooking stove, everything that was needed for a sojourn in the woods. And the works yard site is described similarly, as though everything could fit on there. Well, it can't. It's a works yard, first of all. It has to contain a mason's shop, a glazier's shop, a store for stone before it's cut, a store for stone after it's cut, 2 buildings for the large circular saws which cut up our stone. We're proud that we're the only cathedral that deals with stone from the quarry all the way to fixing on the building. It needs a scaffolding store. It needs a canteen for the works yard staff. It needs parking for works yard vehicles. All that needs to fit in there if it's to remain as a works yard. Now, yes, we're planning to contract that somewhat and make the buildings modern, and that will leave room, we hope, to construct an exhibition centre for the Magna Carta and a song school for our choristers. But it will not leave room for an office building and an archive and a library and everything else that our opponents who don't know the site, don't work on it, and have little experience of its day-to-day running. It will not leave room to make all that possible. And that's why the analysis that you'll see in the papers suggests that Leadenhall, the building owned by the chapter which returned to us when the school closed, is an obvious site for the location of some of these functions, consistent with the ambitions of the master plan.
Thank you, Andrew. And then I'm going to let the lady who wanted to fill some gaps speak.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions. We may not, don't need to take them all in one go, but I've got one on flooding. I've got one on sort of the net zero bit and one on the building itself, the new building. The firstly on the flooding, obviously, we've seen that, this last couple of weeks haven't been great for that. What assurances can you give us that this building is 100%, flood risk proof? And equally, are we really looking at the worst case scenarios and future deterioration, climate change? So what assurances of a definitive nature can you give?
I'm looking in the direction of one of our advisors. Could someone like to help with an answer to that?
I can answer that. My name is Isaac Hudson. I'm the cathedral architect. With regard to flooding, the building is in zone 3A, so it's outside of the zone 3B functional floodplain, which is where you've seen some videos of flooding today. It's the same flood zone as the south side on the cathedral and most of the rest of the cathedral close, excepting some areas of Northwalk. The building itself, the archive, is a metre above floor level, so should there ever be flooding that approaches the archive building, the archive itself will be safe above that floor level. The building, the insurers have, Ecclesiastical have said there's not a problem with that, with insuring the building, contrary to statements made elsewhere. The Environment Agency haven't raised any objections of support the application, and they are the national experts in flood risk. So we are confident that there's no other site anywhere in the close that's actually less flood risk that's available, and the flood risk is manageable, and we wouldn't be proposing a building for such an important archive in that location if we didn't think it were to be. Okay.
Thank you. The lovely lady who wished to speak, I'm sorry, I've forgotten your name.
Hello, Claudia Suckling. I'm the director of the Wiltshire Historic Buildings Trust. And thank you very much. I know you've got such a packed agenda and it's incredibly kind. I'm not going to repeat anything that's been covered by anybody else because I know that you've all got homes to go to. The first thing that I would like to say is that our trust is only concerned about protecting the heritage of this city and our county. And in that regard, you know that it's a Grade 1 listed building, And under planning law and under the NPPF, it is our obligation to protect that. Any harm to it should be wholly exceptional. And under section 214 of the NPPF, if there is any harm done, it has to be offset by substantial public benefit. Now, one of the challenges we have here is that there has been no proper recording and analysis of the fabric of Leadenhall. And anyone who's an architectural historian, as I am, will be able to look at the facade of that building and know that that is not a Georgian replacement building. It's a Georgian wrapper around the medieval remains of a canonry designed for Elias Derham, the architect of the cathedral, and it was meant to be the prototype for all the buildings on the close. And that makes it exceptionally important in architectural terms that that historic fabric gets retained. The proposals to change it into an office aren't really a problem for us because our trust takes on and rescues and repurposes buildings. The problem is the intensity of the use proposed and things like the floor loadings and also the insulation that a 21st century office requires. Because the roof that it's proposed to raise is the roof that if you look at the facade of the building and you'll recall those two disproportionate windows on the right of the entrance hall, oh, thank you so much. Sorry, I don't have a fancy PowerPoint. I have scruffy notes and bad handwriting. So, that was it. So, nope, the facade of the hall. So, as you see, a Georgian building is always designed to be symmetrical unless there's a reason not to be. And the gigantic windows to the right of the entrance door show that that's probably where the medieval hall not only was, but still is. Now, I've had a lovely meeting with the Dean in Chapter, and Jackie has confirmed to me that it's in the roof above those large windows that the surviving moulded timbers are. But of course, the whole of that roof line is now going to be changed and the roof replaced. But those are probably the original timbers to the original medieval hall, the prototype for all the canonries on the close, bearing in mind that this city is fortunate enough to be a true medieval designed landscape. And that's why the public benefits truly do have to be benefits and they truly do have to be public. And whilst I'm incredibly grateful to the Dean in Chapter for trying to put together a list of benefits, the majority of them are not benefits to the public. Bringing staff together in one place is not a benefit to the public, although I can understand the aim. And the new building, as I will now go on to, isn't a benefit to the public. Now, the archive building, I'm also, by the way, a trained paleographer and have looked after museum collections and know about the risk of flooding and also the risk of water ingress. Having run a museum that was on the banks of the Thames, admittedly in a spot that didn't flood, and it was almost impossible not to keep the water from around our feet, which I think is what Isaac has very manfully tried to do. It's relative humidity. Now, I was surprised to read that the right authorities had been consulted and yet they had given the go-ahead for this building. So I contacted the National Archives because they are obviously the preeminent organisation and they have a special department that advises on things like the construction of new archive buildings. And it turns out they haven't been consulted at all, not at all. And they were very surprised, and I hope they won't mind me reading out a section of their response. And I hasten to add, I approached them because I wanted to understand why I was having unnecessary concerns. I don't believe that there is anyone here at the National Archives who's been consulted by Salisbury Cathedral on their plans. I'm also fairly confident that it is unlikely that the National Conservation Service has been consulted either, as is stated on the cathedral's website, as I know that they equally would not approve such plans either. This is me having sent them simply the planning documents that the applicant submitted and asking how, whether they could explain why they mitigated the risk. However, I haven't asked them directly and I'm not in contact with them at the moment, so I couldn't claim to speak on their behalf. So that's a mitigating factor. The Cathedral's website states they're developing plans following the National Archives building standards. We don't have a set of building standards, but there are British standards for the conservation of cultural heritage, and I've attached some screenshots. So, as a paleographer, as the conservator, former conservator of irreplaceable historic manuscripts, it's not necessarily the water slopping around their feet. It is the relative humidity in the building that I think is a huge risk. I do think this sets, if the scheme goes ahead, there is a very dangerous, and I have discussed this with the Dean and Chapter, and so it's not coming as an ambush or anything. As somebody who specializes in heritage and conservation, it is a constant struggle when we're dealing with owners like the Dean and Chapter who have a scheme that they really want, but that harms the historic fabric. If you add to that the belief, rightly or wrongly, that there has been a deliberate program of neglect, if this scheme goes through, when it is acknowledged by Historic England to be causing harm, when the physical evidence within the building hasn't been properly analysed yet to see how much damage to the historic fabric it's causing, and with the archive building putting the documents at risk, I think if neglect is seen to be used as a reason for approval to get the repairs done, this will have massive repercussions for heritage protection in this city, but also throughout England. And I would beg you to please consider that when making your judgment, and I'm very glad I don't have to. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay then, team. Could somebody turn the mic off in the middle? And Mac, your mic's on. Andrew.
Sorry, I've got the two more questions, if I may. So the next question is related to the net zero ambition. I think net zero is a laudable ambition, but I don't believe it should be at any cost. And on reading the document which you put regarding the response on solar panels, I still find it quizzical as to why you want to place such a large number of solar panels where they are. Whether you call it a solar farm or a solar array or what have you, they're solar panels. And the idea that Stevenson Hall does not have the area to provide you the capacity that you need feels a bit of a cop-out. There's been no consideration of BPIVs. There doesn't seem to be any consideration of extending, say, Stevenson Hall to allow more solar panels around it on the roof. And what we've heard already from several areas around the loss of garden and the landscape and providing more benefit to the public. And I realise that you've got wildlife area underneath the solar panels. It just seems to me to be slightly balmy to do that when you have the combination of green energy, the combination of batteries, which don't seem to be mentioned at all, the combination of BPIV, the combination of being able to extend or reshape the roof to Leaden Hall. I think you could end up with a win-win all round where you achieve your green ambitions, but in a better, more clever way, without effectively just trying to put solar panels there and hide them, by having a surrounding area that means that you can't see them unless you're on top. And the argument that you have solar panels elsewhere in the close seems to be a bit of a weak one. We should be doing what is the best for this site. So that's my second question. I will go on to the third whilst I have the microphone to allow you to think about that, which is the building. We've heard about sightlines we've seen the fact that it is, reasonably well screened by the older buildings around it. We've heard the fact that, yes, you can see the roof, poking out at the top. And, we've heard about the fact that ultimately, other areas have modern buildings around which complement older buildings. But it feels to me that, again, the elephant in the room that hasn't been addressed is making it fit in better, with the surrounding buildings around it. And it just doesn't feel to me that that has been considered enough, when that was the clamour, I think, from a lot of areas, that people wanted a building that fit in with the buildings surrounding it much more harmoniously. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, jump.
I'll try and remember the points. So the solar sorry? Okay, the solar panels. I don't quite understand what the issue is with the solar panels on the kitchen and garden side.
Shall I expand, please?
Yeah, go on.
So you have an array of solar panels.
Yeah.
And when you look on the map, the building of Stephenson's Hall roof is not that much smaller than the footprint of the solar panels, at least as it's been drawn on the plans. And effectively, you're putting those in an area, effectively, of the close, and effectively, hiding it, behind a screen. It seems to me you're wasting a huge amount of land there that could be for public benefit, garden, children playing, all of those kind of things, an outdoor reading area where you can read the archive, whereas you could use the Stevenson roof with BPIVs, these modern tiles that are solar photovoltaic. They don't look like solar panels on the cheap ones, they just look like tiles. You can use a combination of batteries, battery storage, and cheap green energy overnight, or even offset green energy elsewhere, well away from the city or the cathedral. So you could achieve your net zero ambitions without introducing a large, ugly solar panel array, however well hidden it is, and the loss of space that provides in the whole surrounds.
Okay, I'll try and address some of those points. The roof area of Stevenson Hall, the south-facing roof area, is 40% of the area of the solar panels. Well, we could rebuild Stevenson Hall. It would require quite a lot of intervention to make the whole of the roof south-facing. The solar panels are designed so that they're screened. They can only be seen from one property. Historic England guidance is to use ground-mounted panels ahead of panels visible on roofs in historic buildings, which we followed. The roof of Stevenson Hall is a copper roof. You can't have integrated solar voltaics in a copper roof. You would have to change the roof to something else, which would mean a steeper pitch. Well, it's a massive investment that isn't necessarily, I don't think, because we can put them in the kitchen garden. We've also had response from Wiltshire Council and Historic England who support the idea of the solar panels in the kitchen garden. It is an area of the site that's in the Zone 3B floodplain, so it will flood. So the idea of reinstating landscape gardens in there, it has to be a flood-resistant, resilient landscape. And it's an idea, and I think we can pursue the opportunity of putting more panels on Stevenson Hall, but the development needs to be net zero carbon, ideally, and the calculations have been done so that the energy generation matches the solar panels and the heat pumps on site. That corresponds to Salisbury City Council's declaration of the climate emergency. We have to do what we can with new developments. The idea that we can just go to a green energy tariff, that suddenly the tap is switched and the electrons coming into our power supply from only green energy and not from gas power stations, just untrue. We really want to do our bit in terms of generating and equalising the energy that's used on site and being generated on site. And it's something that Dean and Chapter are quite keen on, and we've been tasked to pursue that. So it would have to have a difference of opinion on that. But I do think that there are opportunities also to put solar panels on Stevenson Hall in future, and that's something we can look at, definitely. Okay. Oh, sorry, there was another question on the archive design. The in keeping, yeah. There's a variety of different architectural styles and periods across the close, and particularly the west side of the close. There's brick buildings, there's rendered buildings, there's stone buildings, there's tile buildings. It's very difficult just to pick one and say it's going to match this. There's been a concept behind the design which the Dean has elucidated today in terms of what was on site, making sure that we design a building as Historic England describes, handsome. We can use the cathedral's works team, the masons and lead workers. There's quite an interesting link between the name of the building, Leadenhall, and the idea to put a lead roof on it. We need to have a weather-resistant building that's going to last a long time. We use materials that have low embodied carbon that are going to last a long time and not need a lot of repair. And there's quite a lot of thought behind that design. I think if you say it's not in keeping, you'd have to point at the building that you'd like it to look like, and I don't think that's possible on the west side of the close. There's so many different buildings. Okay.
Article, did you want to speak?
Thank you, Chairman. The both arguments are very compelling from both sides, I have to agree. And also one is to remain or retain the building and one is to enhance. However, as a councillor, as a planning committee member, I have to decide or I have to take some sort of decision upon the planning application. So there are some positive and negative when we see a planning application. When we hear from the Dean, they have touched all the element that is required, which is the Heritage England, which is also approves, and the floodplain also approves of this kind of, that gives us the reassurance that which is they are in the good, right direction. However, the concern that I have is from the opposite side, when they mention, even though if we kind of approve this planning, for their understanding, for all their due diligence, it goes against the planning law. And that's where I'm kind of stumbled, as even if I did say yes, but if they reappeal and it goes against the planning law, then we have a problem. As a councillor myself, I couldn't put council to a position where we go on an appeal and we lose and we fail because of our neglect of looking at the site. So although what the Dean has said, they have touched all the correct points as what the planning approved should be, but then if it goes against planning law, which is a difficult one for me to judge, and I certainly couldn't support something knowing that if it goes against the planning law, I certainly couldn't support it. But apart from that, however, if the planning law does not exist and what they are doing is correct, then I think this lovely building, which we all care for, needs some sort of enhancement, and it needs what they are proposing. I think, I don't think there is anybody better would understand the cathedral and the whole site than Dean and few others, I'm sure, you know. So I think the enhancements is needed because there's no point leaving that beautiful building as it is. And I think when it comes to it as well, also to note that yes, it has been neglected, and I think I didn't hear because of the neglect or because of that derelict site that they needed to do the work, but it has been neglected. I feel sorry for that, and they should have had looked into it. But however, I conclude by saying, if officer or yourself, Chairman, says that it does not go against the planning law, then I'm happy to support. But if it goes against the planning law, I'm afraid I cannot support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Article. I know Nick would like to come back, but if I just take the questions up here first. Phil.
Yeah, I'd just like to say that, excuse me, the Dean and Chapter have listened to concerns, and I know that they have decreased the size of the archive to get it into 3A. They've reduced the solar array as well. So they're listening to the concerns that people are raising. where we're talking about neglect, there definitely has been neglect, but I wouldn't be going to approve or project this as neglect as one of the reasons. But this is on enhancing the building here and improving the building. The only one thing I would like to ask Dean Chapter is, as being sort of recommended by the society, is has there been a full look at Wyndham House, and has there been anything brought to that to see if all the members can be moved to Wyndham House, or has that been looked at fully?
Thank you. Attical, can you turn your mic off, please? Yes, Annie, then Mac, and then Nick.
I'd like to ask the people from the cathedral what their answer is to the comments that were made about humidity in the building and the potential damage to documents from that, and how that's, if you are absolutely confident, and if you are, why?
Okay, is this on? I'll answer that, and I'm going to be quite robust in my response. It's absolute rubbish. Relative humidity and the control of relative humidity is to do with the internal conditions in the building. Whether it's a bit wet underfoot outside or it's raining has no impact whatsoever on an archive. And we have taken advice from the National Archive specialist. So there's been some quite serious misinformation here tonight, and I want to make that quite clear.
Thank you, Annie. I'll let you. I've forgotten this lovely lady's name as well.
Hello there, I'm Anne Waddington, and I am here as somebody who's known the site for over 50 years and is also an ex-governor of the school. I'm also the person who took the first video that you saw, showing the extent of the groundwater surges that happen in that area, immediately adjacent to where the proposed archive building would be positioned. And the difficulty is, as I'm sure some of you may recollect as councillors, in 2014, the residents of Sarum St Michael had to be evacuated because of the rise in groundwater affecting all of the electrics in the electric substation positioned within the front of Arundel's. This also impacted all of the pumps required to pump the sewage along the houses on West Walk. These are required to operate 24/7. Like the solar panel, the array of solar panels and the air source heat pumps, these all rely on electricity. Electricity and flood zones don't mix. So the impact on humidity will be that all these safely and carefully devised humidity control systems are more than likely to be deactivated at the next flood. And this is not a once in a century occurrence. These things are happening year after year. And the current situation has not been assessed, whether by mapping or more importantly on the ground by the Environment Agency. And therefore I would suggest that the flood risk assessment which was prepared and upon which the Dean and Chapter currently rely is already outdated. And certainly they haven't seen the likes of the video and the extent of the groundwater problem, which extended all the way across Marsh Close as well. And likewise, I doubt the insurers have seen it either, because a sensitive building which requires humidity control, which is wholly reliant on electricity from the solar panels, which could easily be deactivated because they're on a flood zone, to me, smacks of an uninsurable building and project. And I hope that that clarifies some of the vulnerability of the humidity within that building.
Thank you for speaking. Is there any other member hasn't spoken that wants to? I'll let Nick speak then. And then after Nick has spoken, we will have a discussion amongst members in a different room. So everybody can have coffee. We'll have a little discussion amongst ourselves and then we'll come back.
Madam Chair, I'll ask Stuart Starr from Cole Easton, who prepared our flood risk assessment, to respond to the last point that's been made, and then, if I may, I'll address some of the other points that have cropped up.
Yep, that's fine. I'm just conscious of time, but obviously you're keen for us to give you an answer. We are not going to be able to debate that in front of you, so we will have a little break in a minute.
Okay. Hi. The matter of the power for the dehumidifiers, my understanding is that it's not powered by electricity. It's completely independent of the electricity supply. So it wouldn't affect the humidity in the building if there was a flood outside the building or if groundwater levels were high. The dehumidifier, the humidity control would still operate. And there was another point raised about the validity of the flood data. We requested from the Environment Agency up-to-date flood data in October of last year. So all the flood levels and flood level data used in the flood risk assessment are entirely up to date. It's the latest data. It also includes allowances for future climate change in accordance with EA and NPPF guidance. So the data we've used is for an extreme 100-year return period flood, including an additional allowance for climate change, which would increase the flood by 40% in future. So it certainly does represent current and, in fact, future flood risk to the site.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, Councillor Hock raised very properly the question of planning law. Our planning consultant is here. Might he just respond to that suggestion?
Yep.
I'll be brief, Madam Chair.
I'll time you.
Okay. I said brief, so I didn't give you a time. I think there was two areas of planning law that were raised by one of the earlier speakers. Part of that was some of the NPPF, which obviously you'll know is the National Planning Policy Framework. And there was also reference to policy from your own neighbourhood plan. So the element that was talked about from the NPPF was in relation to neglect. And obviously the point was made that building owners shouldn't be rewarded for neglect of a building. The wording of the NPF has a subtle reference to deliberate neglect, which I think is very important. So that the aim behind the wording of the NPPF is that an owner of a listed building shouldn't be able to deliberately allow their building to deteriorate in order to then benefit from a planning permission or listed building consent later on. So I think you just need to consider whether or not the cathedral as the landowner are deliberately looking to let Leadenhall deteriorate, or whether, as you've heard before, they've been trying through the Conservation Officer and Historic England to agree a programme of works to deal with the immediate work that needs to take place. Just coming on to planning law or planning policy, as you'll be aware, a lot of planning policy isn't black and white, doesn't necessarily refer to Leadenhall, but requires decision makers to consider various elements of a particular policy. So, for example, your policy, I shouldn't be telling you about your own policy, but the wording of the neighbourhood plan policy about the close allows decision makers to make judgments about, in this case, the works to Leadenhall or other developments. So it sets out 4 tests so that development should take account of the distinctive character of the close. I'm summarising a little bit. That it respects the character of the close and its cultural use. It protects biodiversity, ecology, and the landscape setting of the close, and avoids the disruption or deterioration of archaeological or architectural character of the close. So the policy, and that's similar to Wiltshire policy, requires decision makers to make judgments on those points. So it's unlikely that a decision would be clearly contrary to a planning policy, so long as whoever's making the decision has carefully considered those points. So I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. The gentleman there would like to speak, I assume, and please be brief because I think my cup of tea is calling. If you turn the mic on, yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm confused about the question of a deliberate neglect. How did it happen if it wasn't deliberate? When, as I mentioned at a previous meeting, when the school was expelled from Leadenhall, Jackie Molnar at a meeting I asked Jackie Molnar, what's going to happen to Leadenhall? And she didn't know it was grade 1 listed at the time. And I pointed out it was, and she said, oh, we're going to maintain it. Well, how, if it was maintained, did it come into the condition it's in? And you might have been told during the Dean's Charm Offensive that it was because of COVID. Well, 2 buildings within the Liberty of the Close, 2 grade 1, 2-star listed buildings in the Close, within the Liberty of the Close, were legally restored during COVID. So there was nothing stopping routine maintenance. Another excuse I've heard is, oh, well, the 2008 bank crisis. Well, what would it have cost to clear the gutters? This was a case of deliberate neglect. Otherwise, how did the building develop black mold? How did ceilings fall down? Were they not inspecting the building? It was grade 1. It was their responsibility to inspect and maintain the building. Obviously, it didn't happen. Otherwise, the building wouldn't be in the condition it is today. So I'd just like you to consider that because of the planning law that says deliberate neglect precludes planning permission. And if this wasn't deliberate, was it accidental? It's a question to ask yourselves when you deliberate on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, come back in.
Thank you very much, Anne Waddington again. Just to hand you some copies of the relevant sections of the National Planning Policy Framework and the sections that apply. I think you might be particularly interested in the sequential and the exception test to building on a floodplain when alternatives haven't been considered. They're at the head of this piece of paper, and there are 3 copies that hopefully will assist in your deliberations.
Yeah, I did remember it right. Thank you very much. Would you like to? Go on, Nick.
I'll just deal with the specific point raised about Wyndham House first, if I may. There are two issues so far as Wyndham House is concerned. The first is that the space in Wyndham House is equivalent to 28% of the space available at Leadenhall. So you will see immediately that in terms of accommodation, it's a much, much smaller space. It's also set back behind Salisbury Museum. Access to it, those of my colleagues who work in Wyndham House day by day can only gain access to it through the museum. So in terms of it being, as it were, a publicly accessible building where people go if they're coming to have a meeting with cathedral staff, it's manifestly impractical for that purpose. On the question of public benefit and planning law, I would refer you or re-refer you to the opinion of Cyrus Sheikh KC that was obtained last year. The list of public benefits that I quoted earlier were not mine, they were those of leading counsel. And you'll have seen that that document is available on the website and it comes from a source independent of me. And lastly, I want to address and utterly refute the suggestion that the cathedral has deliberately and willfully neglected Leadenhall. I'd ask you to consider whether, in what you know of the cathedral, is the cathedral an institution which would deliberately set about abandoning, neglecting the built heritage assets that are in its care? I suggest absolutely not. I think it's an outrageous suggestion. The fact is that when the school closed, you will remember that the following year, we were all of us in Salisbury fighting for survival because of the Novichok attack. And hard on the heels of that followed COVID. And yes, I imagine 2 other buildings in the Close, in the Liberty, were completed during COVID. My guess is that those 2 others weren't having to cope with closed doors and a sudden and massive reduction of their income due to the loss of tourists. They weren't having to cope with furloughed staff, and so on and so forth. So in those years after the closure of the school, there was no expulsion. That's another heavily loaded phrase that's been used. In those years after the closure of the school, yes, there were very good reasons. While the principal focus of the cathedral was elsewhere, it was on survival. We have survived, and we are here to breathe new life into Leadenhall and to restore it to life. I've said, I'll say for the 3rd time, we've been waiting for consent for Wiltshire for 12 months to carry out urgent remedial works. But those who claim to love Leadenhall and want it restored have to concede, surely, that the only realistic long-term future is for it to have a viable purpose, which will see it through the generation after generation. That is what the cathedral is proposing. That is our ambition, and that is what we hope you will agree to this evening.
Thank you. Right, members, I think we'll go and adjourn somewhere else. Members of the public, I think there might be coffee in the next room if you want to go and grab one. And we will be back shortly, probably 10 minutes. Oh, welcome back. We've just got to wait for a couple of members who've just disappeared for a second. Are the two gentlemen that were sat there gone, or are they coming back? Yeah, they've gone. Okay, right. So we'll bring this back. We've now got to take a vote on everything everything we've heard. We've had a discussion in the other room, and we think we're ready to vote now. So if I have the proposer and seconder.
Thank you, Chairman. Given what we have seen, I'd like to propose that we support this along the wording that we have mentioned to our officer.
Thank you. And we've got a seconder. Okay. Right. Right. Beth's going to read out the wording that we came up with. Oh. Yeah, bear with it.
SCC support the application subject to compliance with planning laws.
Right, that's it. Now we're going to take a vote. So all those in favour? And abstentions? So that's the vote that's cast, is to support it subject to compliance with planning laws. We will now move on to the next item. You are all welcome to stay in such a sunny, happy place. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, councillors.
so we're going to continue with the planning table from the Leadenhall one beyond, and then we'll go back to the ones that we missed, which were the big ones, okay? Right, so we're now on to St Anne's Place. St Anne's Place, this is just ducting and stuff to, I think it's for internet, from what I read. There wasn't any comments. I didn't see anything of great significance in this application. So are we happy for no comment? Yeah, happy for no comment.
I'm sorry, Chairman. Why aren't we on Sarah
Because we're going to do that one at the end because it's a big one.
Okay, so I'm a bit baffled as to where I am.
We're on the one after Leadenhall.
Right at the end, I think we've only got Exeter Street.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right, so no comment for that one. Right, 115 Exeter Street. I emailed Andy about this because it's a affordable housing block that is currently run by a housing association, but they are now saying that it's no longer viable for them to run it that way, and they want to sell it on the open market. So they're trying to change a caveat in their thing. Andy?
So yeah, this is the owner of the property who they can't find a lease for affordable housing. Within this, they said they were going to give evidence, but I cannot see it in here to say who they've contacted. So they're going to take away, I think it's 13 affordable homes because of, they said they've approached agencies and no one's taken it on. But within this, it doesn't actually have any proof of that.
Salisbury can ill afford to lose this number of affordable homes. People are crying out for homes. I can't understand how they can't make it work, or perhaps they just don't want to perhaps the present operators just have other priorities at the moment. I don't know. If these properties can't be managed by a housing association, then surely we should be asking Wiltshire Council to take them on and do them as council properties. But what we don't want to do is lose accommodation that's aimed at those people in our community who can't afford anywhere to live. I mean, that's just wrong. And in addition, our neighbourhood, I think there are 13 flats, I can't remember quite now, but in our neighbourhood plan, anything of 10, any development of 10 properties or more is required to provide affordable housing. And I don't think we can look at this and say this is right at all. And I would propose that we object very strongly and that we write a letter to Wiltshire Council asking them to consider whether there is a way they could take on these properties and run them as social housing.
Thank you. Andy, did you want to come back? Oh, Matt.
I just, as it's in my ward too, I just wanted to second everything Annie just said, I think. And I've seen this even in other parts of Wiltshire. I've seen this happen again and again and again where people try that, you know, once they've started building or converting in place and they try and get out of these obligations that they signed up for. And it is, you know, that's part of the condition. So I object on the strongest grounds. That's all.
Thank you. Article.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I totally agree. And I think every time we see a planning, we're always trying to encourage affordable housing. Now, if we give that application, people will come back to us and say, look, every time they talk about affordable housing, there was a classic example, but they supported that. So I think we should object absolutely what Annie has said.
Al.
Yep, I agree with everything that's been said by my colleagues, and I'm happy to object to this as well.
I agree. We should object because it sets a precedent for other providers to suddenly change their mind. So, all in favour of objecting? Yay!
Is it possible for us to write to Wiltshire Council and ask whether any attempt has been made to interest them in running it as social housing? And if not, whether that's something they would consider? Are we able to write them a letter in those terms quite alongside doing this objection.
Yeah, I don't see why not. Article.
Chairman, thank you. That's a very interesting question you say, Annie, but also, let's say, well, we don't want to, but what about the Salisbury City Council? Are we going to be in a position to buy something like that, even from the loans board and something like that, and create it ourselves?
Just to clarify, so that he's not selling the property, he still wants to let it at open market. So what he's saying is that a letting agency will do it at open market for more money. So if we're doing affordable, it'll be basically we are the letting agent, if that's the steer. So yeah, it's not a sell, we can't buy the property, it's about a letting agent not wanting to do affordable housing.
We don't have the resources to run something like this ourselves. We don't have housing officers. We'd be opening a whole can of worms. But I take your point. It would be nice, wouldn't it?
Andrew?
I'm just a little bit, somebody might have better insight onto the economics of these things, in the sense that, we keep saying affordable housing, there's massive demand for affordable housing. Why is he finding it difficult to get somebody to take on, to let out affordable housing if there is such a massive demand for affordable housing?
Yeah, it's very much what I feel, and also, like I said, because there is no evidence of who's been contacted, we are making a judgment just on his word. There should be a list of who he's contacted. It is not on this for.
I think is it A2 Dominion that own it? That have it? I think it's a housing association. So currently, if they let it at housing association, it's probably not making that much money. So if they let it on the open market, then they'll get far more for it. So yeah. Ow.
I'm happy to speak to Adrian Foster, who's the cabinet member at Wiltshire for Housing, and see what his opinion is on this.
I'm happy to delegate that to you.
So just like the wording.
Yeah.
So I've got STC strongly object to the application and will speak to Wiltshire Council asking them to take on the responsibilities. Councillors are concerned it sets a precedent for future affordable housing obligations.
Yeah, that's great.
About Wiltshire Council, I said we'll speak to Wiltshire Council asking them to take on the responsibilities.
Article.
I think also it's correct to say that we haven't seen enough evidence that they've actually been to several places. I think that needs to be included as well, as why we came to that conclusion. Setting precedent is one of them, but we don't see for them to actually approaching several agencies to find that information out. So
Yeah.
I think that's quite important to add.
Yeah. So no evidence to still keep it as social housing. Right, moving swiftly on. Are you happy with that, but no, Beth? Yeah, that's fine. Right, where are all the rest of the trees, aren't they? After that.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yes.
Right, so we'll go back to the Sarum Academy one. We've got Sarum Academy to discuss and the paddle courts on the golf site on Wilton Road. So the Sarum Academy one is in my ward, and its expansion to make sure that it's reforming it. Actually, the pictures look quite good of what they intend. So when they remodeled Sarum Academy in 2010 or whenever it was, they made petals, and so that it all sort of interconnected. And they've decided that they can't do that with this because it's not going to interconnect the same, and there was a bit of disjointedness. So they've remodeled, and the plans actually look quite good. So I'm quite happy to support this. Just pull up the picture. I think there's one with lots of writing on that's a bit better. Oh, that one. So where the curved building is, that's been used by one of the SEND schools but they're going to redevelop it so that that makes it more of a social hub at the beginning, which I think will be much better for the community. They've said that they'll do lots of stuff for the community. So happy to support. Yeah. Thank you. Golf driving range, yeah. So the golf driving range is to provide 4 paddle tennis courts with pedestrian access, 17 car parking spaces, and areas of biodiversity net gain. So, Andrew.
Yeah, I think I'm overall supportive of paddle courts in this place. I mean, it is, as far away from other houses as you can generally get. And, we all know that paddle tennis is a thing of the future, and being part of a sports complex is great. I just have one slight thing that's probably worth looking at. They've kind of fudged the closest residential buildings away. They've put, they're approximately 100 meters, and 100 meters is sort of one of the distances where generally, the noise goes down. 160, I think, is where you can't really hear it. So if it's outside 160, it's all, tickety-boo, you can do what you want. If it's between 100 and 160, then you probably need some noise mitigation. The way they've orientated the courts are east-west, and that is not as good as it being north-south. I'm not suggesting they change the courts to be north-south. And the reason for that is, the ends have glass walls, and that obviously stops the noise, whereas the sides just have, chicken wire fencing, and obviously the noise goes through chicken wire fencing and not through the glass walls. But you look at where they put it, and the houses on the other side of the Wilton Road, I think, with my, just using an eye and the sort of Google Map scaling, I think it's inside 100 meters rather than outside 100 meters. And given the fact that it's on the, open sides, I think they should either get a noise assessment, which they haven't done, or put in, noise attenuation on the north side. There's houses on the other side of the Wilton Road. If you go to Google Maps, the farmhouses down to the bottom are well away. They're clearly, well beyond 200 meters.
There's a letter a letter in the representations from a resident who is an elderly resident. I think of that. What's that converted farm called?
Yeah, that's the farm. I think.
Can you? I can't read that.
Unless it's
well done.
That might be recent then, 14th. So they want lights, so they want a light, and then they've agreed that the lights should turn off at the same time as the golf lights at 2000 on the weekdays. But these are much noisier than tennis courts.
Yeah.
First of all, the ball is different, and secondly, you get a lot more hits per minute than you do in a tennis court.
There's
So
another
it's a lot more.
another letter.
Yeah, go on, Matt.
So first of all, before debating this, can I ask if anyone here has played paddle?
I've seen it a lot, not played it.
Have you been standing next to a paddle court?
Yes.
Because I would say, and I play quite a lot of it, I love it, I love to play lots of tennis, but it's played with a soft ball, it's a bit softer and less noisy even than a tennis ball. There's so much nonsense around the world about, because they mix it up with pickleball played by the over 90s in the States, upsetting everyone in San Francisco and make a lot of noise. That's aching hips or something. It's not noisy for a start. It is not noisy. Much less noisy than even tennis, because tennis, nobody ever complained about a tennis court. That's one thing. I think from a public health background, we're trying to get people to be active, and anything. And that, obviously that's my main profession, but anything that we do, and I think, and my final point on this is that complaining about noise of a ball that's made of soft, it's not like a squash ball, it's a rubber tennis ball, pop against a glass wall, when you have the Wilton Road, one of the busiest roads in the county, thundering past with trucks, and we're worrying about a ball, give me a break. That's
Right.
what I have to say about
As
that.
chair,
That's
I'm going
my
to just
case.
jump back in because there's a couple of sort of bits that we need to do because we are going to go over our time. Well, we already have technically. So can we please have a vote that we continue?
Yep.
Thank you. All right. Now, Phil.
What I was going to say is that we've already approved the paddle courts at Victoria Park. They're closer to houses than what these are. That's it.
Andrew, can you turn your mic off, please? Article.
Thank you, Chairman. As the ward member, I've been to the presentation and I think they've touched all the element and even the local people supported at that time. So I think I will be certainly supporting this application.
Thank you. Patricia, you wanted to speak, I think. Did you? Oh, Al.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't think we should be putting up barriers to exercise and health, both for a physical and mental perspective. So I'm happy to support this.
Okay, I'm just going to jump in because I looked at their previous applications, which were actually refused for lighting. So is that going to be an issue? Is this a way to fudge around what they've had before? I mean, the whole paddle idea is 100% a necessary thing. And as we've said, anything that gets people out exercising, happy to do it if they turn the lights off at the same time as the golfing range. Andrew, you want to come back for one more go?
Yeah, so on the lighting, they have 100% agreed that they should stick to the lighting policy. All of those rejected lighting applications were to extend the lighting, which were all rejected. So yeah, they've learned from that. Just be clear, I am 100% supportive of getting these pickleball courts. Paddle courts, but I just think for the sake of one noise attenuation wall on the north side, they could keep everybody happy.
Okay, so if we support it, can we say that we'll support it as long as they do a sound attenuation?
I think they need to do a check on the sound, you know, in those residential buildings to the north side, and you know, make appropriate, you know, or get Wiltshire Council to check. I mean, because adding a noise blocking wall just to the north side, because you're not going to put it all the way around. It's just on the north side.
Okay,
just seems a
Phil,
obvious
come
thing
back.
to do.
All I was going to say is the driving range is next to it. The guys hitting the balls off the driving range probably make more noise. I don't know.
Right, Patricia, did you want to say something?
Chair, I just wanted to say that I will support Mac's point. I can't believe that noise from the game will be anything like the noise that they get from the road, and the fact that in Victoria Park, the buildings are so much closer.
Okay, Al, did you want to say something now?
Yeah, my final comment will be that the noise from the trains will drown out the sound of the balls.
Quite correct. So we're supporting, but we want them to make sure they do some sound barrier for the residents at the bottom, because that's what it is. Yes. Yeah.
So the comment I've written down for you to vote on is SCC support this application if the lighting policy is adhered to and the relevant sound mitigations are implemented.
That's fine.
Perfect. Right. Are we all voting on that? Yes. Next, we've got a lot of trees, and you know what I love to do. Take them all on block. Oh, the change of use. Oh, Catherine Street, the upper floors, the HMO. I'd forgotten that one. Sorry. We'll do trees in a moment. Right. Again, I looked at this and didn't think it was too bad. Same as Phil. Phil can come back in.
Yeah, basically this one I agree with, but I just want everyone aware that it is next door to 35, excuse me, which is a lot bigger HMO they're requesting. And I just want to make sure that it's from the same person, the same owner of both buildings. So
Have we already supported that other one though?
It's on the late business.
it's on late business. We haven't supported anything yet. I mean, I agree with this. The one on the 33, I do agree with at the moment.
Yeah, we did.
I'll have a look, but they might have sent it back. So that if there's a variation, they send it back. So I'm going to repeat it. We would have got it in. It's been put on late business, which means we would have got it in the last week. So it would make sense that there's probably a variation on what we agreed to before.
I think it is, because I think before it was for C4 and now they're asking for sui generis, so they're trying to make it a bigger more rooms.
Andrew?
I think you have to have sui generis if it's more than 8 rooms, which is why they want to change it. So it's not really, it's really the number of rooms means that the permission they've got is actually wrong, because you can't have it.
Okay,
in
that's
that
fine.
way. If it's
So,
only, if it's 10
are we
rooms.
supporting this? Support 33. And we'll review 35 in a minute. Right, so, is everybody happy with that? Can I have a show of hands? Right, so now we'll go on to trees, which we've got a lot of, but I'm quite happy to take them all in block. I did look, I didn't see anything controversial. Is there any notes on that one? I can't remember.
The only one that seems to have a lot of felling in it is Sarum Gardens.
Yeah, that's what the one we're just looking at.
Yeah. Then we've got an elder. We've got quite a few different ones. We've got,
yeah, go on then.
Yeah, because all above work is in good that's good arboricultural management for an area that has been long neglected. So that's saying that basically they're updating somewhere that's been neglected. That's what they're felling, the trees.
Yeah.
Unmanaged woodland can go.
I think the third line is the one that's relevant. Felling is to remove self-seeded specimens that are damaging boundary fences or obstructing footpaths and buildings.
Okay, I'm happy to support it on those grounds. Yeah, everyone happy to support that one? Are you voting against it, Patricia? Yeah, right, one against, everybody else is for it. Right, not a problem.
I didn't vote because
Okay, one
I'd have to go and
abstention.
have a look. Yeah, and I'm not going to do that now. am
Just
I?
be correct. Right, so where are we now? Late business, which I haven't actually printed.
This is the one.
Late business is the first one is the next HMO in Catherine Street.
Yeah. Can we just take a look at this, the plan, just to, and see what the difference was from the previous? Because I'm sure they did, I'm sure this is the one we've had before.
If it's just if it's just a question of them changing the definition of what kind of permission it is,
Yeah.
rather than changing the actual plans.
Yeah, to cover that.
This was this done because it's, yeah, this wouldn't have done and we wouldn't have come to this. All these papers are
These are
beyond
new.
our last planning,
Yeah.
so this is new. This is not the last
Yeah.
one that we said.
What's the application form saying? Why do they put the important bit at the bottom? Yeah.
The existing proposal,
Yeah.
the existing proposed don't actually show the existing, they only show the proposed.
This covering that the proposed 60 HMO. Okay. If it's a licensing thing for them to have their registration, I don't see that we can actually object to it. Because if they've got,
all I would say, there's 10 bedrooms there,
yeah,
1 kitchen,
Yeah.
no other living space.
so it's bed sits
Bed,
basically.
they were all bed sits. So there's no living space or anything, so everyone stays in their room. All the rooms are en suite. But there's 10, you'll have 10 people in that kitchen, which is in the middle of the first floor. It just feels a bit overdeveloped to me.
Although if they've already done it, what's their existing?
Well, that's the problem. We don't know what the existing is.
So it's already approved, then this is just a technicality. Yeah, yeah, it is. I think it is for their licensing, so it's already been approved to do.
Yeah, maybe we should look. Yeah, to me it feels a bit
But then
overdeveloped.
if it's in Catherine Street and there's so many takeaways, I expect they all live on takeaways. Yeah, and or they get discount in the cafe. Yeah, I don't see any reason to object to it because it's something they need. Yeah. No comment. Yeah. Right, St. Francis. Oh, Wren Kitchens, LED ticker display.
There's quite a good picture of the front of the building. Effectively, they've got above where the doors and the glass is, there's a placard which effectively they'd want to turn into something that they can change, a ticker display. It's the band below where it says the big green Wren sign, and above the glass doors, it's that sort of middle coloured stripe that they've got. They want to turn that into, an LED ticker display. It's opposite the garage where you go into, Tesco, on the left-hand side, as before you go around the corner to Lidl. It's pretty unobtrusive. It's in the middle of the commercial site. It's a modern area.
Can you turn your mic off so Al can speak?
Thanks. As you've got all three Milford councillors here sitting in a row, I don't object to this, do you?
No, I don't.
No? Okay. So we're quite happy.
Right, all in favour to support? Yeah, that one's. Right, St. Francis Crescent. Proposed 2-storey extensions and alterations.
Is this the one that looked like there was going to be a complete new house on the side? It's a very big extension. I don't know the area particularly well.
I think if you
anyone
get
does.
the, if you get the future plans, you'll see the floor plan.
Go.
So there was a garage out to the left-hand side, but everything from, you can almost see it, cut down the middle, everything to the left effectively is new, apart from obviously the garage is gone and they put 3 parking spaces in there. But it looks to me like a sort of mirror house, if you like, of the same size, if not bigger, 2 kitchens, 2 front doors, 2 dining rooms, 2 lounges. It's effectively not an extension, which they've advertised this as.
It's an annex, so is it for a disabled person or disabled
Doesn't
relative?
say,
Is there
but-
anything that indicates that? Okay, so no comments. Are we objecting? Would you like to object to this one, or do you want to do no comment? Everybody content with no
Yeah.
comment?
Yeah, I think no comment.
Yeah. Yeah. All in favour of no comment? Yeah, that's fine. Salisbury Antiques Centre, Wilton Road. Proposed repurposing with modifications of the existing building and change of use for retail showroom, offices and residential. Andrew?
So I had a look at this. They previously put in an application to demolish the whole building and sort of start again. This is, I think, a near heritage asset. It's not a heritage asset, but it's an old building. And having looked at it, they said, look, in its current use, it's just not a viable commercial proposition anymore. So they're effectively splitting it into 3 types of uses. There'll still be, the ground floor commercial building, but then in the middle they'll have residential. The top was always residential, as I think there's a top flat existing one. So effectively, they're trying to make it into a viable commercial building, and I think it looks pretty good if you take that premise.
Annie?
I think it's really nice to see that building being repurposed rather than demolished and replaced with something faceless. It's got a bit of character about it. They've said that they can't make a go of it any longer as an antique centre alone because of the way that the antiques trade has changed. And they seem to have a potentially interested taker for a smaller retail unit on the corner. And I think it makes them interesting flats. And it seems to have plenty of parking with the drop curb and everything. Yeah, I think it's really good.
Article.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we always like to retain the commercial units. Even on town centre, when they are retaining the commercial unit, it makes us happy. That's what we want to see. Above what they do, they want to create a flat or house, it's all happy with me. I'm just happy that they're retaining the commercial unit, which is quite important, and that's what we need to see. Thank you.
Thank you. So can we word it that we support and we like the fact that they're going to retain some of the character of the external parts of the building and the commercial unit? Happy with that wording? Yeah. Right. The old surgery, St Anne Street. It's a tree. So to be dismantled. Are we happy for it to be dismantled? Okay. We'll support that. College, car park at College Street. More trees. Okay. We've got one doesn't want to support the tree dismantling. Okay. Right. More trees, yew tree. Yeah, if it's just general maintenance. Yeah, we're happy for that. Okay. Right. No, we've got highways next. But we will be brief. We're almost there.
This is an important one.
Okay. Right, Annie, you can lead on this one.
I'm delighted to see that the folk club are going for this work to be done on the track up to the social club. It's something that Andrew and I have talked to the club about, and along with Brian Dalton, and we're all very supportive of getting something done about this track. I had even looked into the possibility that this council might be able to fund some work, but of course we can't because it belongs to Wiltshire Council, the actual trackway. We are working with the folk club to try to do, with the social club to try to do something about the lighting on Salisbury City Council owned land, which is the actual parsonage green. Officers are looking into what might be viable there, bearing in mind wildlife concerns such as bat corridors and things like that, and possibly using solar lighting. But they are looking into, our officers are looking into that side of it. But if we can get Wiltshire Council to be encouraged to pay for an improvement to this track, I think that would be hugely appreciated. And if they don't, then it will come back to us again because it's making it very difficult for people to access the track, the club by car. And the trouble with tarmacking it, which is one of the things they want to do, is that it's on a steep slope and the water will run down off of the hillside. But that's, at the moment, not a consideration for us if it's going to Wiltshire, is it?
Support?
Yeah, I support strongly.
Okay, Al.
Yeah, I'm happy to support this as it will go to LHV, but you will have a long wait.
About
We know.
3 years. I mean,
Okay.
The trouble is, it's the only, we don't own it. We can't do it ourselves. Otherwise, I'd go.
Madam Chair, I mean, can we explore what else could we be done? Because you're absolutely right. And now I'm our representative on LHV. I've seen her here that it's a 3-year wait for anything.
Yeah.
So what else because this is important. I fully support this. Where else can we look to get at least the potholes filled?
Lottery fund?
Maybe that's not a question for
I
us.
think this is
approving
not
this.
a question for now.
Yeah.
I think we're all looking at what we can possibly do, but I think it's not a question for this meeting. We just need to answer this now. Yeah, Andrew?
You could be really cheeky and report it on my Wilts and see if they'll come along and fill it.
That's a good idea.
But the club don't just want the potholes filled, do they? They want proper surface put down.
But maybe if we all report it on my Wilts first, they'll fill the potholes and then they'll go, oh, actually, this is a neglected road. Let's tarmac it. Yeah, we're all happy to support it.
Yeah.
Yep. Next, Gigant Street. The crossing allows access to the multi. So they want a crossing, a formal crossing. I'm happy to support this. That is quite yeah, from Culver Street to Brown Street. Yeah. Improve the visibility. Happy to support it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And Lucky Foo Asian Mart. Yeah, it's the premises license. And it won't be selling alcohol for on-site consumption, only off-site consumption. And it's only up till 9 o'clock at night. I did actually read this one. I did my homework on this. Yeah. Why are they selling? All sorts of stuff. It's a supermarket, Asian supermarket. So I'm happy to support this. Yeah. Yeah. Because, I mean, we'd support any other supermarket if it was Tesco's or anything else. So, yeah. Happy to support it. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, there are no more matters arising. And I've broken my record because it is now 9 o'clock, well, 9:01, but the meeting is closed.